Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Global Conference on Sustainable Plant Production, the Thematic Session 6, which is on Mechanization and Digitalization. Subsection 6.1 is on mechanization, and 6.2 will be on digitalization. My name is Said Mkoma. I am the Vice Chair, but also Executive Secretary, African Conservation Tillage Network. I am sitting in on behalf of our session chair, Prof. Jeffrey Mrema, who is online, but unfortunately could not travel and be here in person. We have 5 presenters for this section 6.1, but before allowing them to come in, may I remind that the question and the answer session is foreseen at the end of the presentations, so please end up vote questions through the Mentimeter, the link of which has been provided. You can also exchange greetings or write general comments in the chat box. And just to also let you know that the whole session is being recorded. Later will be available on the conference website for any future references. And the conference program is also available as per the link shared. With those remarks, I would now want to welcome our first presenter, who is Professor Gajendra Singh. Professor Gajendra Singh will be covering the topic on agricultural mechanization. Where are we and where are we going? Professor Singh has been the chair of the Science Committee, Appropriate Scale Mechanization Consortium of several universities in the US. The other details of his bio are also as presented online. With those remarks, Prof will now hear the recording from Prof Singh, who is not here with us, but online listening to respond to any questions. Welcome, Prof, the recordings from Prof Singh.
Good afternoon. This is Gajendra Singh. I'm going to talk about agricultural mechanization, where we are and where are we going. I'm going to start with mechanization in India. We had a great revolution which started in late 1960s by bringing high-yielding varieties from Mexico for wheat and rice varieties from International Rice Research Institute in Philippines to exploit the potential of high-yielding varieties. It needed fertilizers, and to utilize fertilizers, it needed water. And for that, we needed to use good irrigation facilities. So the first mechanization was water lifting, groundwater lifting, using tube wells and pumps. These high-yielding varieties increased the agricultural production, and it did not increase unemployment, but also freed some labor for other sectors. This reduced the hunger, and it increased the manufacturing and services activity. The tractor became the driver of the rural economy. In addition to irrigation pumps, the most important mechanization became of threshing because of huge amount of crop to be threshed, and then the transportation, and then soil preparation, seeding, planting, and crop protection also. Last year, the agricultural machinery accounted for roughly $150 billion worldwide, and Asia and Pacific region accounted for roughly half, and for which India and China share was more than 40%. At present, the level of mechanization we look at, the contributors are tractors in terms of sales, and then we had harvesting equipment, planting and fertilizing equipment, and forage harvester. If you look at the extent of mechanization for various operations, soil working and seedbed preparation account for 40% mechanization. Seeding and planting is being mechanized up to about 30%, plant protection about 34%, irrigation is mechanized up to 30%, 37%, and harvesting and threshing, especially wheat and rice, is mechanized up to 65%. Agriculture machinery industry from AMMA has given us some indicators that there are about 250 medium to large scale industries in India, 2,500 small scale industries. Most of the tractors are in 41 to 50 horsepower and 31 to 40 horsepower range. In the terms of recent developments, climate change, temperatures are increasing, weather variability is having more frequent extreme weather events, ecosystem boundaries are shifting, and invasive weeds and pests are also increasing. Agriculture is a major contributor to this climate change problem, and it generates from 20 to 30% of total greenhouse gases, especially contributed by animals and rice production. If we look into the future, we need about 70% more food by 2050 to feed 9 billion people. We have very limited area for food to be increased, and at present about 1/3 of the food is wasted. Asia's market in the food is roughly 50%. Food prices are increasing, and to reduce the very high pressure on resources in animal production, we have to change more to alternate protein sources from plant sources. The food preference is also changing. Globally, people want diverse food with increased nutrient value, more awareness of environmental challenges, and more farmers are adopting to natural and organic farming practices. The chart on the right shows that the adoption of organic farming. The small farmers in India need pull-based mechanization. We need affordable no-till seeders for them, breeding equipment for row crops, cotton, soybean, and banana, residue management tools, farm-based compost management. We also need multi-purpose farm prime movers, precision spraying equipment to reduce input cost, multi-grain seeders and direct feeding equipment, harvesters for cotton, soybean, and other field crops, harvesters for vegetables and fruits, and protection from damage by wild animals, which has really caused a change in cropping patterns because of the damage by the wild animals. And oil palm, being a new crop in India, still needs a lot of mechanization in cultivation, spraying, harvesting, and processing. The trends in conservation agriculture are given in the chart here. The South and Central America leads the area under conservation agriculture with 41%, North America with about 33%, and Australia and New Zealand about 11%. The conservation agriculture area is still very small in Asia and Europe. However, this area is now increasing and hopefully will increase much faster. The economic benefits of conservation agriculture are improved production efficiency, and it improves the soil productivity, and it has environmental benefits that protect the soil and make agriculture more sustainable. The trends in smart irrigation systems, one of the techniques is the alternate wetting and drying. It saves up to 30% water in rice. These smart technologies help monitor soil condition, weather, water level, watering and nutrient schedule, and global irrigation equipment market is about $1 to $1.5 billion at present. One example of efficient subsurface irrigation for trees is a simple 2-feet watering stick. This reduces the water by 50% in coconut, mango, and banana and other plantation crops. The system uses 3 sticks around the tree. In this case, we just insert the drip pipe. The water is discharged from the hole at the lower part of the pipe. In controlled environment agriculture, this is the fastest growing segment globally. In 2021, it was valued around $75 billion and increasing at the rate of 10 to 20%. 30% of controlled environment agriculture reported from Europe and Japan and producing about 30% food. The major drawback is energy intensive. If lighting and heating are needed, the main advantage is lower inputs, more yield, and less time. And what is needed is affordable climate, nutrient control, simple cultivated net houses, improved storage and logistics. Advanced agriculture technologies like internet and communication technologies, ICT, are being used for crop planting advisory, pest advisory, market access, soil and water potential, and yield prediction. Drones have been used very effectively for locust control and for field surveys. Blockchain, artificial intelligence are being used for tracing and tracking food product identity and detect fraud, gene mapping and databases, and agricultural logistics. Areas to be further researched and developed include drones for agriculture spraying, irrigation advisory, artificial intelligence for irrigation, nutrient management, and big data for nutrient and pest advisory. Future of agriculture mechanization should cover all food production systems. We need affordable tools and equipment for small farmers because the small farmers produce diversified, nutritious foods locally. There is a need for more emphasis on input cost reduction and wastage reduction, more emphasis on water harvesting and optimum water usage, more natural conservation practices that give resilience, more no-tillage farming, adopting conservation agriculture, local food processing, storage and distribution systems, increase in control environment agriculture, and less usage of chemicals, less use of energy on farm, more electrified equipment, including use of solar energy, and need technology absorption in plant-based protein production to reduce animal-based protein. In conclusion, sustainable agriculture mechanization with optimum use of farm inputs increases sustainable production intensification and also contributes towards environmental friendly agriculture management. I'd like to acknowledge the contributions of Dr. Syed Ismail and Dr. Surendra Singh. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. This is Gajendra Singh, I'm going to talk about agricultural mechanization, where
Thank you so much, Prof. Gajendra Singh, for that excellent presentation, reminding us that the tractors has been a driver of rural economy in India, that 19 to 29% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from agriculture, which can, however, be still a solution to that problem. And finally, reminding us that sustainable agricultural mechanization is the core and the driver for sustainability, environmental friendly agricultural management, as well as optimum use of farm inputs. Kindly post any questions, comments you might have. Now we'll proceed to our second presenter, who is Cecilia Onyango, talking about digital innovations and precision agriculture, an opportunity for smallholder farming systems in sub-Saharan Africa. Cecilia is an associate professor, Department of Plant Science and Crop Protection of the University of Nairobi. She's online. Please welcome and proceed with your presentation, Cecilia.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite to this meeting. As the chair has already said, Cecilia, sorry about that. I work for the University of Nairobi, and I'm going to do a presentation on these digital innovations and precision agriculture as an opportunity really to smallholder farming systems in Africa. So it's well known that agriculture sector in Sub-Saharan Africa is mainly by smallholder farmers, and they're the ones who really ensure that there is food, and then this kind of farming system provides employment to majority of the people that live in this continent. However, what we have seen over the years and in most African countries is that agriculture or crop production has really been underperforming, overall declining trend, and therefore we are a lot of increased food insecurity, malnutrition, and poverty among communities. And here we see a lot of these small-scale farmers having very poor access to inputs. There is minimal or really lack of extension services support, and there is use of suboptimal management practices in the crop production in these fields. And the farmers really lack precision in the use of inputs to provide or to boost their productivity. And we see that most governments give these blanket recommendations. That's like one size fits all approach is being used by most governments, which is not the case, because you realize that within the landscape in these sub-Saharan Africa countries, there are large variations between and within farms, and as well, there are differences between farmers in terms of their socio-economic status. But then we see an opportunity with the digital innovations and also precision agriculture to provide information that's really specific, that targets these smallholder farmers and that can boost their productivity in terms of crops. And we have seen, because recently I was involved in a review of what the current status of the use of precision agriculture and as well as these digital technologies. And a lot is happening within the continent, but this has not translated to increased yields. For example, there's use of wireless sensors for real-time plant water stress detection. This has been used in Burkina Faso and in Malawi. There's also the use of microdosing in terms of fertilizer application. This has happened in Niger. And as well, we see the use of soil diagnostic models. When combined with GIS, then they provide a site-specific fertilizer recommendation in Ghana. But also when we go to Kenya, Ghana, and Cameroon, there is the use of mobile and web technologies that provide advisory services to farmers in remote areas. And these areas, most of them have very poor connectivity, and the farmers have low literacy levels. So see that this is a great opportunity to improve crop production among the smallholder farmers, who are really the majority in this continent. However, there are challenges of implementation. Even if we see that all these technologies are available within the continent, there are also challenges to implement them. For example, the low levels of literacy among the farmers, the poor connectivity, especially in the remote locations. And we see that most of these small farmers are located in this kind of environments. But to add to that, we've seen, I can give an example of Kenya, the Kenyan situation in terms of extension services support. For the longest, farmers were supposed to demand or are supposed to demand for extension services. But you realize that some of them have no capacity to demand for those services. And in addition to that, the use of machinery and computer software are not always available in all the farm sites for these small scale farmers. Therefore, if we can just give again an example from Nigeria on the extension services support, it's quite inadequate. And this is from a source by Akivewa of 2018, that the ratios we have in there are way below what the recommendations are. For example, when you look at the different villages and the farm families, you see that the extension ratio to the farm families is 1 to 5,000. And FAO recommends 1 to 800. So if you look at that ratio, it's many times lower than what's expected. And now this gives us the real picture of what's happening in the ground and why we are not seeing increased productivity or crop production in sub-Saharan Africa. And yet what we are seeing in other parts of the world is that there's an increasing or a growing trend in terms of yields, in terms of quality, in terms of capacities per unit area of production. So what do we see as a way forward that can really improve or contribute to increased crop productivity in sub-Saharan Africa? One way is to provide models of acquiring these technologies, which depend on a cooperative approach. Remember, we have several farmers with very small sized pieces of land engaging in production. And so if such models are utilized, then the farmers can take advantage of the economies of scale. The other way is by the provision of appropriate extension messages using these technologies that exist that target large numbers of farmers and that uses the languages that are understandable to these farmers, because most of the times, again, you realize that the technologies are developed in languages that are not easily understandable by the small-scale farmers. And as well, the use of voice response in local languages that provide answers to smallholder farmers' questions. Because now within the sub-Saharan Africa, most of those countries, we have the use of mobile technology, for example, and almost every household has access to this kind of technology. So if these kind of messages are provided, but also include the capacity building of these small-scale farmers, the trainings on how to use such technologies, then it's possible that we can utilize this opportunity of digital technologies and precision farming to guide the production or production systems within these farming communities. The other way we can do this is to strengthen the public-private partnerships so that this can support the provision of these technologies to smallholder farmers. But also not to forget the integration of indigenous knowledge that exists among these farming communities. So as much as we are pushing forward the use of digital technologies and precision agriculture, and we are seeing the advantages of this among these small-scale farmers, we should integrate what exists as knowledge or indigenous knowledge of those communities in these systems to make them adaptable to the communities to boost their productivity. Thank you very much, and I will welcome questions later.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cecilia, for that interesting presentation on the opportunities we have to increase productivity using digitalization, using ICT technologies. However, there are challenges we must overcome before reaching there. So we proceed to our next presenter, who is Emil Jat, working with the Global Research Program, Resilient Farm and Food Systems, International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, that is ECRISAT, and the title of the presentation is Mechanization Solutions for Enhanced Climate Resilience, Productivity, and Reduced Environmental Footprints in Drylands of Global South. We have a recording of his presentation, so we'll proceed to listen to him.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. First of all, let me express my gratitude to FAO for providing this opportunity to share some of our experience on mechanization solutions for building resilience, improving productivity, and reducing environmental footprints, especially in smallholder systems of South Asia. When we talk about mechanization, I think it's very critical for sustainable intensification of the agricultural systems, and also the transforming, especially the smallholder agriculture, through sustainable intensification to achieve the critical goals of reducing poverty, improving the growth of agriculture, mitigating the climate change, and also achieving the land degradation neutrality goals. So mechanization is integral part of the agricultural intensification process and has a key role in achieving these goals, what I described just earlier, briefly. Farm mechanization is also essential agricultural input with the potential to transform the lives and economies of millions of the rural families. So if agricultural mechanization efforts are to succeed, there is an urgent need for all the concerned actors, be it the farmers, supporter, researcher, extension agent, planners, or the policymakers, to understand and contribute to the agricultural mechanization efforts across the entire farming systems and with a value chain perspective. When we talk about the transition toward the sustainability, the management factors which are really critical for transitioning to the sustainability includes the tillage and crop establishment, biomass management, water management, nutrient management, weed and pest management, which has implications for the energy or the cost of production, the adaptive capacity of the systems, the greenhouse gas emissions, the productivity, and also the resilience. And for all those factors, the mechanization is critical. Now, when we talk about the mechanization, and I'm sharing this from South Asia, the smallholder system, there has been a lot of innovations in terms of the scale appropriate mechanization for sustainable intensification, whether you talk about zero tillage managing the crop residues, and also the improved seed metering systems to improve the time efficiency of the agricultural production systems, because time efficiency is the key. Also to reduce the labor and the energy use, reduce the drudgery. And I think for that, the scale appropriate seeders are important. Also, the soil specific furrow openers are important. We got lot of new and low cost seed metering systems, which are very precise, and also the mechanization led business models through the mechanization incubators or the startups, youth, and also the capacity development effort. So in that context, I'll cite few examples on the mechanization from the smallholder systems of the South Asia. Now I take the first example of a very systemic innovation for sustainable intensification to provide windows of opportunity to reduce the climatic risk and also improve the food and nutritional security. And this is coming from the Indo-Gangetic plains of the rice wheat cropping system, the intensive system, where there are a lot of problems related to sustainability, but how the systemic innovations, including the crop variety, the cropping systems management, and mechanization can help in building the resilience and improving productivity and the nutritional security. So if we take the example, we are promoting the shorter duration rice varieties. That means you are vacating the field with early, which provides us an opportunity for advancing the planting of the wheat, but then you need adapted varieties and the machines like happy seeder. So once you do that, that helps in buffering the seedling stage heat stress, and also because of the early seeding, you can harvest your crop bit early, which can escape the terminal heat, and that provides an additional windows for introduction of the shorter duration legumes like mung bean in the rice wheat cropping system. So that's a fantastic example of the innovation where mechanization plays important role. So I think we need to harness the power of the genotype, environment, and management interactions for building the resilience, wherein mechanization is the key. And you can see the systemic innovations for conservation agriculture or sustainable intensification with impact at scale, the happy seeder and the super SMS, the simultaneous harvesting and planting of the crop with the zero time lag without any delays, and build the resilience. How you build the resilience? And you can see the example and impact of this systemic innovation where wheat plant seeding was advanced. And you can see the trends of quite a few years. In 2007, you see very less area in October planting, where in 2018, 2019, you can see significant increase in advanced seeding, which is planted on the residual moisture. And that's where the combination of the variety and the mechanization plays important role. And you go to almost 1 million hectare area adopted on that, which helps in escaping the terminal heat. And when you say terminal heat, I cite the example of this year, where there was a lot of effect on the wheat productivity because of the terminal heat. But wherever you see the advanced seeding and the mechanized seeding using happy seeder with conservation agriculture, you can see there is a less effect in productivity compared to the conventional seeding, and also reduction in the global warming potential or greenhouse gas emissions. So that's a perfect example coming from this year. And because of this terminal heat, and use of the mechanization, we could gain 0.2 million hectares of 2.2 million tons of the wheat, which is costing like $57 million only in Northwest India. Also, how mechanization helps in building the resilience, but also addressing the issues like COVID. And this is one example where we see how the COVID impacted the labor and also transplanting of the rice, which delayed the transplanting, delayed harvesting, and that lead to the lesser window of planting for the wheat. But when you go with the mechanized solutions like direct seeding of rice, which helps you in reducing the labor use, addressing the labor shortage issues, and also allowing you planting your crop on time, harvesting on time. And that's how the direct seeded rice has been adopted over 0.6 million hectares in Northwest India. And I think mechanization played a crucial role, and governments are now incentivizing farmers for adoption of the direct seeded rice. Now, when we talk about the summary of this whole mechanization towards sustainable intensification in intensive cereal system, you can see clearly 5 to 10% yield gains the 8 to 17% saving in the water, 26 to 44% saving in the labor, 46 to 62% saving in the energy, improving profitability by 16 to 56%, and also reduction in the global warming potential or the greenhouse gas emission by 11 to 16%. So that's coming from the large data set across the IGP of South Asia and multi-year data, and that clearly indicates that mechanization is really key in building the resilience, improving productivity, and reducing the environmental footprint. And you can see the metadata analysis on direct seeded rice even, where you can see there is a positive effect on the productivity and also reductions in the greenhouse gas emissions. I would also like to cite one more example of a technology which got impact at a scale, the laser-assisted precision land leveling, which I feel like a silent water revolution with impact through partnership and science. I think this is one of the best examples of the NARS and CGIAR partnerships, where you see, with no laser leveler, existing in 2000 to 40,000 plus laser levelers having impact at 7+ million hectare, generating employment, and also, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, saving on the water, saving on the electricity, increased productivity. And this is one of the example of public investment in a technology which is sophisticated, which is costly, but still farmers are putting resources on it because it's a complementing mechanization technology on the other mechanization. For example, if you go with the laser leveling and go with the no-till or direct seeding, the effects are positive. And that's how farmers are adopting this technology. So that's another clear example of the mechanization. So I think mechanization has a key role to play in terms of enhancing the resilience, improving the productivity, as well as reducing the environmental footprints of the agricultural production system, and especially in the smallholder agriculture. So with this, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, and would be happy to respond any of the questions or the queries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Emuel Jat, for that very informative presentation, reminding us on the role of mechanization in sustainable intensification, in reducing climate change risks, as well as the role of science and partnerships in scaling up adoption of technologies. So again, if you have any questions, please put them down in the chat so that we can ask the presenters to respond in the Mentimeter. Sorry. Our next presentation is on business models and economic perspectives of agricultural mechanization and development. This is going to be presented by Hiroyuki Takeshima, a senior research fellow, Development Strategy and Governance Division, IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute. I hope you are ready to make your presentation. Please welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. First, my name is Hiro Takeshima. I'm from IFPRI. I would like to thank the organizer of this event to invite me to make this presentation. There are several ways to classify business models. Even if you focus on a particular example, custom hiring service. Some are provided by individual farmers, some are provided by farmer groups, and others provided by entrepreneurs. There are also several success factors that in assuring the success of custom hiring service. The human capital is important. How mechanization service is diversified is also key. Farmer organizations involvement and the linkage with processors and aggregators, mechanization equipment suppliers and repairers, overall profitability of agri-food value chains, and access to finance and infrastructure. All of these have been identified as generally important factors affecting the viability of mechanization service models. There are also several successful elements looking at the conventional mechanization experience in Asia that can be applicable to Africa. In Asia, demand for mechanization was quite variable across locations, and high-yielding varieties, high-yielding technologies in general induced the tractor adoptions by smallholders. Also, the demand for mechanization was affected by the level of local economic growth, industrialization, urbanization, and the prevalence of smaller machines also had implication on the upfront financial requirements and the required machine utilization rates. This has implication for Africa, where larger, more expensive machines, tractors are used. Even for the local manufacturing business, often the business model started from more simple technologies to more advanced methods. So starting from manufacturing of spare parts, and then attachments, and then finally manufacturing of machines. But in Asia, one key thing was that even when subsidies were provided, the government focused on minimizing distortions and maintaining competitiveness and inclusivity. Credit were often provided by machine sellers, so the value chain finance was one of the key tools. And multifunctionality machines were often exploited, further enhancing the utilization of machines. Now, looking among the existing custom hiring service providers, there exists some scope for raising efficiency for less efficient service providers. IFPRI's recent study in Nigeria showed that although the machine utilization rates face significant seasonality, as we expect, the more efficient service providers, they were able to have high machine utilization rates almost all across throughout the season. So this is one aspect that the successful business models can explore. And similarly, these efficient service providers realized higher revenues compared to the cost. And the cost include the fuel use. So in other words, more efficient service providers were able to service more areas while using the similar level of fuel. So this also has important implication on sustainability, environmental sustainability, while providing service. The spatial heterogeneity was another important factors. For example, in Nigeria, service providers who own more powerful tractors tend to travel to areas with heavier soil because they know that those machines are more suitable for those soils. And there are also spillover potentials of yield enhancing technologies are also affecting the demand intensity among smallholders for machines and mechanization. Area with higher yield potentials, farmers were using multiple rounds of tillage and harrowing. So this created this enhanced profitability for service providers because they can earn twice or three times more revenue from the single plot. And in Ghana, our research found that tractor service providers indeed traveled more to these areas to provide service. Now, what can government do to enhance support? Recent examples from Ghana offers useful insights. Ghana has had its flagship program called AMSEC, Agriculture Mechanization Service Enterprise Center. which started in 2007, and phase 2 started in 2016. Under this program, the Ghanaian government improved and addressed many lessons learned during phase 1 and incorporated them into phase 2. Some of them including providing equal support to not only large service providers, but also small mechanization service providers. And they also increased emphasis on maintenance support and knowledge and skills enhancement, as well as promoting multifunctional uses and diversifying tractor brand options. Now, those were conventional mechanization methods, but interestingly, modern sustainable mechanization service that have been emerging are also relying on custom hiring service. And in the case of India, just as the previous presenter mentioned, the zero tillage and conservation tillage service in Indo-Gangetic Plain, the tractor owners provide this GT technology to neighboring farms, just as in the custom hiring service for the conventional tillage. Similarly, laser land leveling in Asia, in some case, custom hire service is provided at the flat hourly rate. Now, going back to the history, precision agriculture in USA also followed similar models. For example, about in the 1999 to 2000, about 40% of the PA technologies, such as soil sampling, yield monitoring, and so forth, were provided by fertilizer distributor. So this was similar to custom hiring service that has been used for the conventional mechanization. Now, there are also promising but understudied models. Use of ICT, Uber-type tractor hiring service, such as Hello Tractor, has been successful in reducing the transaction cost for mechanization service providers. Now, the interesting evidence needs to be collected how this has also benefited the users of a tractor hiring service. There are also some emerging business on crowdfunding for tractor investment that are emerging in Africa, but their sustainability and viability has not been studied. Also, going back to the post-harvest stage, there are emerging technologies such as solar-powered cold storage that have been increasingly used. Our IFPRI study recently showed that this service is provided on a fee-based as a fee-based service, and early results show promising returns of this type of technology. So to conclude, there are successful elements of the conventional mechanization that have affected the viability of business models, and there are a lot of scopes for raising efficiency in existing service providers. The spatial heterogeneity remains a key factor that affects the viability. There are adaptive policy support that is possible, as in the case of Ghana. Modern sustainable mechanization service also rely on custom hiring service. There are promising but understudied models that require further investigation. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hiroyuki Takeshima, for that very informative presentation. We still welcome questions on the Mentimeter, but now we proceed to the fifth presenter for this session, Dr. Pascal Kaumbutho, who is a farmer and one of the lead consultants to development of the framework for sustainable agricultural mechanization for Africa, FSAMA. And the title of the presentation is The Africa We Want, Vision 2063, the Sustainable Agricultural Mechanization Framework towards commercial, environmental, and socio-economic sustainability. Brother Kaumbutho, welcome.
Good afternoon. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. You can hear me properly.
We do hear you properly. Proceed.
Thank you. I'm delighted and honored with the opportunity to address you. I've been asked to reflect on the Africa we want as set out in the Africa Union Vision 2063. I'm going to use the little time I have to set the scene for the state of things and actions needed from an African farmer's perspective. I'm going to dwell on what has been done, the how of what we must do. I will use my commercial farming experience and our mechanization service model experience to define a workable way forward. I make the case that we must change ourselves and our approach to farmer development support. And if we do so, we will achieve Vision 2063 even sooner. Vision 2063 is about a self-reliant continent, able to feed itself and compete in a global marketplace. As we reflect on the Africa we want in 2063, the challenges are many and matters have become very, very urgent, especially with climate change. I have been part of the movement of conservation agriculture in the last 2 decades in the continent. It has moved to climate smart agriculture, renewable, regenerative agriculture, etc. Everything is becoming more urgent, but it has also been discovered that with the levels of agricultural mechanization that we have, we really must do something. So the African Union and FAO came together and developed the framework for sustainable agricultural mechanization for Africa, with the realization that Africa has really lagged behind. And we are talking about 12 times more kilowatts per hectare in India compared to Africa. And I really loved the presentations that have just been given by my colleagues. So the framework as it is, it has carefully looked at what is needed. I think FAO has really nailed it on this one. Boosting available farm power and exploring the business models that will sustainably work across the agri-food systems. Socioeconomic sustainability, looking at the roles of smallholders, their institutions, gender and youth, capacity building across the board. Transforming crop husbandry techniques to make them climate smart. Matters of innovation systems for sustainable technology transfer and innovative finance. Local manufacture and policy, strategies and sustainable institutions, excuse me, that will make regional collaboration workable. So I'll talk from a perspective of a mechanization service model that we've been running, setting up hubs in localities, and the experience of what we have seen happens around when these hubs become operational, and then they are given a value chain approach. The biggest shortcoming for any mechanization service provider is money. I think machinery is expensive as it is. Recently in Senegal, in the Africa Mechanization Consortium, a professor from USA told us that the gap in food security again in Africa is actually only $15 billion a year. If you look at this slide to the right, you'll see that the African farmer is bombarded with all manner of technologies, all manner of information, all manner of support. But they remain, in my experience, relatively unreachable. Whether it is at the level of immediate contact with the community, the cooperatives, the unions that they belong to, the national government, the regional bodies that are working in the continent, etc., farmers continue to just get flashes of this and continue to wonder whether the security that they seek will ever come. So if there is adequate money flowing in the continent, then is it reaching the farmers? Or are we leaving the farmers frustrated, if not confused? I came across some cute slides recently, which I think help deliver the message I'm talking about. And the message here is we must transform ourselves as supporters of farmers and transform ourselves and also the delivery systems that we use in trying to reach the African farmer. In other words, if you look at these slides, when we go to farmers to explain, they explain their challenges, but we choose to hear what we are good at. They talk to us so that we understand, but we listen to them waiting to reply because we are loaded with knowledge. We are spreading huge resources, studying ways around farmers' problems. And yet, if we made farmers our part of our problem, we'll realize that farmers have come to know that problems are the art of living. But we get too anxious and we overthink issues and act very little because we get stuck at the bottom of the staircase while we haven't really started delivering. And this is the problem. We come in silos of knowledge. Everyone has got a little knowledge of soil, another one has a little knowledge of machinery, another one has all this. We confuse the farmer is seeking intelligence, we come with knowledge. We come in very intensive short-term projects, whose energy dies off very quickly. The farmer is looking for consistency. And this consistency, I have come to learn, actually comes from private sector-driven initiatives. So we must take ourselves through this conversion process as supporters of farmers. We must co-create. We must create bases. These for us have been what we are calling hubs. We have colleagues like regenerators in Uganda who are setting up innovation labs. We have entities like the farm in Zambia, where they are trying to see how to help. Everybody is trying, there are pockets of private sector driven activities, which I think really need help because we need common educational and social processes where effective technology and transformation can happen. But once we have transformed ourselves and made ourselves accessible, available to the farmer, then we can now begin to think the farmer, we all know what the situation is on the ground. We also tend to know the outcomes we seek, but the how we have been very weak in this aspect. So if we can set up these centers of excellence where we can validate and co-create solutions, inspiring and catalyzing regenerative agribusiness, then once we are transformed, we will be welcomed by farmers with open hands. I believe that absolutely. The suggested centers of excellence are complete. It's a congregation points of all service providers. And I think this has been said very much over the last 1.5 days, the idea of working together. People who want to help Africa in agribusiness sometimes don't know where to go. It's like, where are these farmers? And we're looking for these centers where farmers are driving the show, where they are at the center, and they are the ones calling the shots. Then they are available to be helped in ways that they suggest. So where we have been dwelling a lot on the what and the why, the how is through the centers of excellence. That is where we convert ourselves, and that is where farmers will begin to listen to us. I'm looking at what we are setting up ourselves in our hubs, centers where youth can incubate their businesses, where they can, for example, in our case, they become booking agents, they form spraying gangs and so on, and then they start getting attracted into agriculture in a new way. The other matter of concern is so now this is what I'm looking for. This is a slide borrowed from Living Labs, and I'm looking at a situation where farmers are, for the first time, and for sustainable development, farmers are at the center. And we really must work towards this. Let everything else work around these farmers. We call them smallholder farmers. They remain where they are, but it is by bringing them together into congregation points, it is when we'll start being able to serve them in ways that can make a difference for them. Excuse me. So and also we have to leapfrog. We cannot continue to work, at the speed we are working. We have been left too far behind. We've shown that pockets of the continent can lead in matters of innovation. And there are so many examples to show about how Africa can also lead in some of the ways. So if we put all this together, we can actually leapfrog the processes that learn from other countries, especially Asia, Latin America, and see how we can move on quicker. So through the centers of excellence, we bring together value chain teams to convert education into intelligence, to create new ways of using new money.
I hope Pascal, you can summarize in the next 1 minute, please.
Okay, sure. Yes, so we have experience of what coming together can do for the continent. In the 80s and 90s, we saw it with societies of agricultural engineers. We saw it with draft animal power networks. Where for 2 decades, we worked under the Animal Traction Network for Eastern and Southern Africa. That is the time when we believed that animal traction is what will change the farming scene in Africa. As a way forward, I am suggesting that we go to the centers, some of which are listed here, which have private sector inclination. In our own establishment as AgriMec, we have what you see at the top here. Across in Uganda, the regenerators are coming up with what they are calling living labs and others, so that we build what I would call climate smart villages around that, borrowing from Asia. And then from around that, we can have climate smart village stakeholder committees who can now drive the public-private partnership system that will come out of that. It is that bottom-up process that will drive the change. Then if we have an Africa Conservation Tillage Network that is reformed, that becomes an Africa Food Systems Network, we can begin to see how we can coordinate from local to national to regional networks, which can drive the F-Summer movement as a beginning, and then or using it as an entry point to the new beginning that we all seek. This way, with the farmers leading, with farmers at the center of everything else we want to do, we are going to move towards commercial, environment, and social sustainability. Emphasis enough on matters are urgent, the solutions are known, Africa is ready. Let us quit placing most resources on experimenting. Let's use the solutions that there are and quickly, and then by letting farmers play the central role, the center of excellence opportunities that I'm talking about, we go out there and co-create with these farmers who feel the pain the most. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Pascal, for that thought-provoking presentation, that the African farmer is bombarded with too much information, yet unreachable, and that the funding is not reaching the smallholder farmers, the intended target. Thanks so much. I think that finishes our first round of the 5 presentations. We will now go into responding to the questions. And we have several questions online, but perhaps we can also give opportunity to those in the room here, if there are people with questions, to share the same. But while you are doing that, I think you have questions that have been shared online. And we would like Prof. Singh. Prof. Singh, yes, there is a question for you here from your presentation, that sustainable agricultural mechanization being at the core and in reality the driver to attainment of sustainable production intensification, environmental friendly agricultural management, and optimal use of inputs. In the realization of this agenda, what are the unique roles of the private sector, national governments, and development partners such as FAO?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. the main driver is going to be private sector. Farmer himself is a private enterprise. We have the government role is facilitation in terms of policy. They have to get the right policies. And also the biggest challenge is to provide finance at reasonable terms. So the financial support, getting the financial institutions supporting mechanization will be the big support. Also facilitating, like building farmer organizations, farmer producer organizations, and rather than making them as a political units, making them as enterprise centers. So I see the role of FAO probably comes from an overall policy sector rather than development of individual equipment or tools. So I see the mechanization grew in Asia all through the private sector in most of the cases, whether it was Japan or followed by Korea and then taking up in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and all these countries. So it's all in private sector. So if there is a business, if there is a work needed to be done, somebody will provide. The government role is to create a policy environment. Academic institutions have to work with the farmers to identify their problems and provide solutions. But I don't want to see the government, rather than just as an incentive or encouragement, not to get involved in terms of supplying equipment. Because once the government gets involved in supplying the equipment, the quality question of quality of equipment, that becomes a big issue, because government orders a big thing with a few manufacturers. We want an open competition. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Gajendra Singh, for those responses. That the government must create the enabling environment, must build the farmers' institutions, and FAO has a critical role to play in supporting, facilitating these processes through their high-level policy situation.
Yes.
We have two questions now to Cecilia Onyango. One is there a business model to achieve precision agriculture for small farmers in sub-Saharan Africa that is profitable? That's the first question. And the second one is, could we have your views on the need of having on-farm demonstrations where innovative and appropriate technologies, including digital technologies, could be demonstrated to farmers in actual field conditions? Dr. Onyango.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. And I would like to go direct to the question on the business model. What we have done, and in what I have presented, is information gathered on what has been going on in this continent, but mostly at the experimental level in terms of the precision agriculture. And what we have seen is that what has been happening is the farmers will get their inputs, for example, the fertilizers, and what they're doing is spreading whatever quantities to their entire fields and not really going to the specific points of the crop and using the right amounts per the requirement of the crop. So I cannot say that that has been developed as a business model, but we see that it will be important now to take this from the experimental situation to the practical aspects and then analyze exactly the benefits, but we still think that there are benefits for going precision so that we provide nutrients that are required in the right qualities, in the right amounts. And therefore, we think, I cannot say for sure that there is a business model that has been developed. On the second question on the use of demonstrations, not everything requires demonstrations, because what you are seeing, for example, in the digital technology where services are provided digitally, we have several examples like the use of the plant clinics in Kenya, where the farmer uses the mobiles that they have within their environment and takes a picture of a problem on farm and shares with the few extension staff that are available within government or with those in the private organizations, without them having to bring the extension worker on farm to give this kind of advice. We have weather advisory services being offered digitally. So yes, it's good to do demonstration, to have demonstration farms, but there are those services that can be offered digitally based on what the farmers have, for example, the mobile technology. So I think that's what I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, for those deserving responses. Now we go to the next presenter, or the next question, which is directed to the IFPRI presenter, Hiroyuki Takeshima. Sorry for that. And the question is, do you have any practical experiences in the management of machinery by farmers associations, and which is sustainable? That is the first one. The second one, the same like what was asked to Cecilia Onyango, is there a business model to achieve precision agriculture for smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa? That was also directed to you, it seems.
Yeah, thank you very much for those questions. Yes, machinery management. In Africa, from my experience, generally, just as I mentioned in my presentation, the level of efficiency vary considerably among service providers, and there are clearly those who those who are more efficient. I mentioned that they tend to be able to cover more areas at the relatively same level of cost incurred as the other service providers. And I didn't show in that table, but when you look at their cost breakdown, their the cost that they incur for repairing and maintenance were also relatively small. So suggesting that they have often good knowledge about maintaining machines, and so this has two components. One is the good knowledge of avoiding any breakdown during the operation. Those more efficient service providers, they often observe the field condition carefully before they use machines. And they make sure that there's no tree stumps or stones that could potentially damage their machines. And so that's one aspect. And secondly, they also tend to have a better knowledge of repairing machines by themselves. They also use machines for which spare parts are more readily available. That's another factor when they decide what type of tractors to choose. So for them, that it's easier to that also reduce the cost of repairing and mainly sustain their business going. So so this kind of knowledge, and also the availability of repair and spare parts, those remain key factors for sustainable machinery management. And the second business model yes, building on to Dr. Onyango mentioned, I would like to my knowledge is mostly from the review of the U.S. experience, and as I mentioned, oftentimes the service was provided by fertilizer distributor who were they're basically interested in increasing the precision application of fertilizer and selling that to the client. And so because of that, they started providing service of assessing variation in soil condition within the plots and also monitoring yield. So I think that's one way, and this maybe there are similar principles that can be applied to African business model in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the responses. We have one question to Pascal Kaumbotho. That while leapfrogging is possible, there is a comment online that yet in most cases, stages cannot be jumped. What are your views on this, Pascal? And the second one is it possible to support and transform farmers, institutions such as cooperatives, into centers of excellence?
If I answer the second one first, yes, absolutely. Centers of excellence are about calling in all stakeholders to work together, and cooperatives fit in that very well. Our experience is that, in fact, when you have a center somewhere, farmers begin to want to have their meetings there. They start congregating there. The input providers start also wanting to show their presence there, and it becomes a beehive of activity, which grows in many dimensions. In terms of leapfrogging, yes, of course, leapfrogging is possible, but there could always be some impediments. I imagine if, for example, we set up the climate smart village committees I was talking about, then maybe there are some politicians or whoever who may not want to see that kind of development, especially if it didn't come from them, petty leadership jealousies and all manner of impediments, like we know in our region. What was the other question? I also wanted to comment on what my colleague Hiroyuki was
sorry, your volume is low a little bit. You wanted to hear the second question?
No, I've just remembered what I wanted to say.
Okay.
I just wanted to add to whether there are any business models for precision agriculture, and whether farmers owning machines as cooperatives has worked in the continent. I would say that cooperatives owning machines, it has never worked well unless they are very particular and exposed to a point of having operators running those machines for them, a very good repair and maintenance system like Hiroyuki mentioned, and also the idea of business models that are cooperative based. I think that is very doable.
Thank you, Pascal. The other question online here is not very much directed, so perhaps I'll ask the panelists here. I'll ask Joseph Kinzel to give a response. And the question is, there are misconceptions and myths that sustainable agricultural mechanization is not needed or is unsuitable for the vulnerable smallholder farmers, e.g. in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. What is the truth? And what is FAO's position on the matter?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, for this, and whoever posed the question to the listeners and to our participants. I'm speaking here as the leader of the Sustainable Mechanization team of the Plant Production and Protection Division. And for the last decades we did, I want to make the point that there is no way but mechanization has to be inclusive. FAO mainly works for the smallholder farmers. FAO recognizes the whole world of farmers, but it's a fact that the large-scale farmers and the fully commercial farmers, they do not really need FAO. But the smallholders, even if they are difficult to detect and to find, like we heard from Pascal, it's still the main client of the organization, and we cannot simply exclude them. We actually have to do the opposite. We have to find the right models to reach them and to empower them. And as Professor Singh said, we need to remind the private sector about this very big group of smallholders that is unable to access mechanization services, maybe because the products are wrongly made. Maybe they are too big, too expensive for smallholders in, for example, in Sub-Saharan Africa. And what's maybe missing in this puzzle is the local manufacturing part. We have in Latin America and of course in Europe, and specifically also if I look at Italy, where I live, such a vast, diversified smallholder producer and manufacturing family businesses. And they know what their clients need, their farmer clients. So I think this element of empowering the local manufacturing sector is another element that we should not forget. But we have to remind the big players, the industry, that it's not good to make the tractors bigger and bigger and bigger, but actually go back down. Lower horsepower tractors that are suitable for smaller fields. Maybe the two-wheel tractor is a solution, or at least maybe it's part of the leapfrogging. So it's a lot of work to do, and that's why we do this session today and this conference, to find ideas and solutions to get this going. And looking forward, we got some good examples from Cecilia with seeing how the mobile phone technology has changed many lives of smallholder farmers, and that you can actually now access information, but also maybe services like the higher services in certain cases. So these are all examples that it is possible, and transformation is ongoing. And we may lose a few lowly paid jobs, but we win a lot of new jobs, again, in the value chain, in the dealership, in the dealer networking, in the repair services, in the manufacturing services. So it's about transformation, and we will always include smallholders. They are our main clients. So I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for the affirmative, that indeed the smallholders are the targeted clientele. And there is work to be done by having the targeting through business models. They might not need to own the equipment. Through business models, they can access and pay just for the service. And I think all the presentations actually were on the affirmative, that smallholders should be the ones to be targeted. And they can benefit, they have been benefiting from mechanization. We still have time for a few more questions. Okay.
Can I comment on mechanization and smallholders?
Oh, Pascal, you wanted to add?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I think one of the things that we must change about Africa is expecting smallholder farmers to own machines. I think we have to propel models where farmers, small-scale farmers, are receiving service other than expecting them to own machines. Unlike Asia, where the smallholder sector has got a lot of technicians and a lot of village level capacity to fix machines easily and so on, we'll get there. But for now, I think the reason I support these centers so strongly and these hubs is in the sense that we need appropriate scale mechanization, and from 75 horsepower all the way to the two-wheel tractor. But why don't we push the small tractors to the youth who have got the patience and the ability to work within the village on the smaller pieces, as the bigger tractors go out and serve the larger pieces of land. It's about coming together and offering services that are appropriate scale.
Thank you so much, Pascal, for those remarks. I think well taken. Hitting the nail on the head. I can see Prof. Gajendra Singh's hand is up. Please proceed to share your views.
I just want to support Pascal, because you need to create these centers, the service providers, which are equipped how to operate machines, how to maintain them, how to repair them. So you need to create these kind of centers and try to select those areas where there is already some skill available. So create those pockets where chances of success or adoption are much higher. Don't try to target the whole country at the same time. So once you create a centers of growth or centers of development in this area, then they will grow out through it. So identify the entrepreneurs who are willing to learn the new things and then provide service. And that's where the government support will come, providing the initial financial support, the training, and all those things, providing with the equipment. So that investment will go a long way. But don't give it, this is only for providing service. And now, like in India, it has reached a stage where the manufacturers are opening the service center. The big tractor companies are becoming the service providers, the big tractor companies, because they got the dealership network. And the dealership takes over the service, not only of repair maintenance of their tractors and equipment, but also providing the service at the farm. So it can grow up to that level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Singh. We have 2 questions, and I think what we can do, since we don't have much time, is pose these questions and then request each presenter to share views in just half a minute. The 2 questions are, if a smallholder farmer had $1,000 to invest on mechanization in his 1 hectare farmland, what should be your advice? That's the first question. And the second one was meant to Pascal, but I guess others can also comment. Anyway, this is to Pascal. Please, Pascal, comment on the way forward after the Center of Excellence is attended, because I foresee some farmers still seeing it as a mini model and then go back to subsidies or handouts instead of sustainability. So Pascal, as you respond also to that question, but I would also like to use this opportunity now to thank the other presenters, so that as you respond to that question also, your parting note. Pascal, you want to start?
Yes, thank you. If a farmer had $1,000, I would tell them just to look for the service, not to try and buy any machine and and use it. in a quick way. The Center of Excellence I think I didn't have enough time to put enough emphasis on how it should be established. If I give an example of what we have in Nyandarua, in a county in Kenya, we go out, we get a farmer who has got their own land, 100 acres. They decide 70 acres can be used by us to create the vibrations that I'm talking about. Once that center becomes farmer-centered, it starts with the farmers themselves. You are serving them. They are the ones expressing which machines should be at that hub, and so on. And the issue of subsidies and all those other things will not feature. Once we set up the center as a climate smart village, climate smart village, and or anything renewable is beginning to happen there, including conservation agriculture. And then we start attracting the attention of other value chain players. And then we set up a Climate Smart Village Committee, which now starts asking the county government to chip in. It's bottom up, it's not top down. We are the ones going to the county governments and saying, look at how this crop is. Look at how planting potato with machine, or look at the difference it makes. So once we attract that, is what I was suggesting, that if we can now move that to beyond Nyandarua into the nation and then into the region, because we have a replicable model.
Thank you so much, Pascal. Yes. Thank you so much, Pascal. Cecilia, your response to the $1,000 and your parting shot?
Yes, to the $1,000, if this is an African small-scale farmer, I will advise them to use that money to acquire digital innovations that guide on planting time, fertilizer requirements, irrigation frequency, record keeping, and market information. I think the digital innovations and precision agriculture have a place in Africa to improve crop production and change lives of the many small-scale farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Hiroyuki Takeshima?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, on this question of $1,000, yes, I echo Pascal that yes, it is best to go for not invest in machines itself, but use it for yes, maybe learning or training, acquiring skills and farming knowledge, and also, if needed, it might be good to also consider more renewable technologies like solar technologies that can be used on farm.
Thank you so much, Hiroyuki. Prof. Singh? Unmute, please. Unmute.
Thank you. I suggest that the farmer uses that money wisely first to buy necessary inputs so he can improve his output, production, whether it's a seed, whether it's some fertilizer or pesticide, whatever will be needed. So he should invest in those things so he can increase his production base. The second thing I like to do, whenever if necessary, he should spend it renting the machine to get his job done, because if he cannot do manually everything. And then if he still has some money left, and if there is a water source nearby, I'll suggest investing in a small irrigation pump, so pumping that water if that helps require, because the water makes all the difference on the farm. So first investment I go in mechanization should be in the drier areas or low rainfall areas or limited rainy season. Then the availability of water makes the most important part. Thank you.
Thank you with those remarks. So we greatly appreciate the presentations, the availability of our presenters, and again, another round of applause to them. Also, we remind that the next session on session 6.2 on digital agriculture will start in the next 26 minutes here in the Red Room, and you are all warmly welcomed to participate. Thank you very much to our panelists here, to our presenters for the highly informative session. I wish you a good afternoon. Coffee break.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Coffee served downstairs.
So he wanted you to tell everyone the coffee served downstairs.
Oh, coffee is served downstairs. Huh? Okay. Okay.
Okay, yeah, sure. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished guests, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to subsession 6.2 of the Global Conference on Sustainable Plant Production. My name is Salah Sakari, and I'll be chairing the session today on behalf of Professor Marema, who couldn't make it, unfortunately. It's both a privilege and honour that I'm here today, and what we're going to be talking about is around digitalisation. In the previous subsession, we looked at smart mechanisation, which was a focus on mechanical tools with a little bit of digitisation in that. In this session, we're reversing it. It's a lot more to do with digitisation and how it may also help and implement with mechanical systems. Digital agriculture is believed to have a significant beneficial impact for smallholder farmers, but there are also some challenges, and hopefully today we'll get to hear both the benefits and the challenges around digital agriculture. We have 5 excellent speakers, extensive field experience as well as policy experience. And our hope in this session is that you'll get both a big picture view as well as some case studies about how digital agriculture is being implemented. We will follow the standard procedure. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to present. We'll let the speakers know as their time's coming up if that needs to happen, just so that we can have enough time for questions and discussion at the end. You'll all see their bios of the speakers on the chat session. And through that chat session, you can have discussions, but if there are any questions to the speakers, we have the Metameter to be able to do that. So please put your questions up on Metameter. And all the sessions will be recorded and they'll be available later. So without further ado, it's with great pleasure now to start the session. And our first speaker is Majola Mabuza. Majola is at the Centre for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development for South Africa, and he's the program leader for the Agricultural Productivity Program for Southern Africa. And Majola will be presenting on a case study on digitisation in the agriculture system for Southern Africa. So Majola, thank you for joining us today, and I hand it over to you.
Good afternoon. May I get confirmation that my screen is visible?
We can see your screen, Majola, and we can hear you. If you put it into presenter view, you're ready to go.
Thank you. So as I've been introduced, my name is Majola Mabuza. I work for CADESA. And what I will be presenting is the findings of a study that we commissioned recently, funded by the World Bank, under the program that I'm coordinating, called the Agricultural Productivity Program for Southern Africa, APSA in short. So this is a report that was presented, or that was developed on our behalf by a consultant that we engaged, called IMC, and the subject is on digitalization in the agriculture system of Southern Africa. And as you can see from the subject or the topic, it's a new release case study for the region. So the scope of the assessment, we wanted to look at the policies and the regulatory framework for agricultural development innovations that are there in the region. We have 16 countries in SADC, the Southern African Development Community. And to map these various agricultural digital innovations, as you will see further in the presentation, how they have been segmented. And then also look at the human resource aspect, because you can have innovations, but you need people who will generate, who will disseminate, and also those who will use those innovations. So we had to look at the human element. What are they being trained on at university? Because that's where we produce our expertise in the colleges, and also through the innovation hubs. And then we had expected the organization that was supporting us to develop what we call an agricultural platform, where the information will be shared and where users would access this information. So this was more or less of a baseline survey that had to be conducted. And the methodology for the policy aspect, first I would indicate that CADESA has what we call information, communication, and knowledge management focal points in each and every country. These were our entry points in these countries, and the consultant that we had engaged, they had their own also in-country what we call contractors, those that are contracted by the consultant. who were, responsible for interviewing stakeholders, collecting information from source, either in hard copies or in soft copies, to share with the consultant for them to, analyze and consolidate the information from the country level. What policies were there, what strategies were there, but the form that the assessment was carried out was also, benchmarked with existing studies or past studies that have been done related to what we're also facilitating at CADESA. And then the typology that was followed under the digital agricultural innovations, as you will see from the top, we have three main areas: access to services, access to markets, and access to assets, with the five, sub areas under each. So in all these other entry points, we had, this is where the information was now categorized accordingly to see exactly what forms of innovations we had from each and every country, and then they were collated together or consolidated to come up with that report. Now, what was found in terms of the policy environment, the key challenges that were found from the assessment was, in some of the countries, you would find that there is no coordination in the development of policies and strategies. You would have some where they have maybe a minister of ICT, whom they will be expected or tasked to coordinate or implement anything that is related to, innovations or anything ICT related. Yet, we would have loved to see something maybe like an agriculture strategy on how to move ahead with the agri-digitalization. And you'll find that even though they would have those different, functions or expectations, there is no coordination at a high level, so that at the end of the day, if we're saying this is a line that we're pursuing, we would have, an output that addresses exactly what we want to see, where technology is now driving, or ag innovation is now driving agriculture, improving productivity, improving communication within the sector. So that is the lack of that, the guiding policy. And I must add that it is something that we have seen also in other areas related to climate change, where you find that there's a Minister of Agriculture, they believe maybe climate change rests to them. There's a Ministry of Natural Resources, there's a Ministry maybe of Water. So you find that each and every stakeholder, they are doing their own part, and there's none that is coordinating at the end of the day, yet this will be within the same country. The issue also of poor infrastructure and network coverage, especially in the rural areas, it's something that is prevalent amongst our countries. And the digital skills that are there, because we're targeting the farmers, most of them are of an advanced age, and maybe they don't have even the expertise to use the innovations that are being promoted under this particular activity. So there is need for training, but again, whom are you training? These mostly are the people who have access to universities and colleges and may not necessarily be in agriculture. So we need to find a way of developing something tailor-made for the kind of farmers that we have, so that they can access and adopt whatever is being developed. As I've said, number 5, many of our farmers, they're of an advanced age, and we haven't seen our youth going into agriculture in a way that, they will be taking over from the older generation. Most instances where you will see the youth, it is where maybe the technology is one that will enable them to effectively participate. So we must find a way of, having them to allowing them to use the innovation, and through that innovation, they can benefit. Either they also participate in the production, or they're the ones now coming up with the innovations or the technology that is required by the sector. And then also the content. It was found that there's still room for it to be more relevant to the local context, so that farmers can benefit and they can use whatever apps that are being introduced at country level. And the other one that was also found was there's still room for, expanding to show the effect of the innovation or the digital apps that are being introduced, so that people can see the results of that impact. And there will be, it will create the demand for having more of these innovations adopted in the different countries. And then the last one was the issue of privacy and security assurance, where people would, be asked to, respond to certain questions. There is certain information that relates to them personally that they will be sharing. But whoever now is responsible for gathering that information, you'll find that at times they don't even wait to get consent from the owners of the information before they can share it with a third party. So there is that lack of security. So countries need to come up with legislation or regulations to make sure that owners of the information, who in most instances will be the farmers, they have that opportunity to have their consent before it is used for other things, even to develop certain more innovations or new technologies. As I said at the beginning, we wanted to find out how many innovations are there across the region at the time when we're doing the study. And I can add, not sure if I said at the beginning, it's a study that was finalized in June this year, but it started in 2021, although negotiations started in 2020. So across the countries, across the region, we can tell by the size of the country and the numbers that are there. In all, we're 216 innovations. But if you take a country like Mauritius, small as it is, it has 21 innovations that were found. You look at Madagascar, large as it is, it has 23. A country like maybe Angola. Angola is even bigger than South Africa. But how many innovations were found there? 23. So from this slide, you can tell where Madagascar sits alongside with South Africa compared to the other countries. And if you now summarize, or you want to get further analysis from the information that was collected, we can see that most of it was from, it was apps, or should I say innovations, that were focusing on digital advisory, most of them, followed by agri-e-commerce. And then we had digital procurement, where there are people using the innovations to buy whatever they want to buy. It could be inputs, it could be insurance, it could be, some are also buying ready-made products. And then we have those who are in smart farming and also digital financial services. Now, in terms of the graph, we can see that this is what now was done to group the countries into certain categories based on the forms of the innovations that were reported by each of these countries.
Sorry, Majola, to interrupt. Would you need to wrap up, please? Majola, we just need to wrap up, please. We reached the 10-minute mark.
Okay. Now, along the chain, this is how now the innovations were categorized. As you can see, from planning up to transportation and then access to markets. In terms of the universities, across the region, these were the institutions that were identified through the use of an organization that is called RUFORUM, Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building. So you will see all this information. I will share a link for the report. And these are the institutions that are providing training related to agri-innovation. And in summary, these are the areas where students are getting training from these institutions. And then the incubators are also listed in this map for all the countries that were interviewed. And then the digital skills and the observations, as I indicated, there is a big role that universities are expected to play, but not all of them are offering what is supposed to be offered or what is expected. And again, as I said, the digital literacy is an area that still needs to be improved. You know, taking into context the local context, languages that are being spoken in the different countries. Also agri-incubators, they have a role to play. And we need to create a platform or an environment for more interaction and activity for the private sector. This slide, we're just showing that this was not the first of its kind. Our consultants, they followed what had been done in several countries, and they made reference to innovation, to information that was already there previously. Now, going ahead, what would we want to see in the region? We want to see that now that we have the baseline information, how can we use it at a regional level to make sure that people know the information and it is utilized so that we support our smallholder farmers to improve on their productivity, to improve their income generation and food security at the end of the day. And we have lessons to learn from other continents, like from the EU. Now, in terms of the enabling environment, I think I've already indicated that an enabling environment is one key area that we need to invest in or create, because if we are saying the private sector is the one to drive, policy needs to provide the cushion and the platform and the environment that is required for them to thrive. I think as I wrap up, I would like to acknowledge the World Bank that funded our study and the SADC Secretariat, because they are the ones negotiating with the World Bank on our behalf so that we would have this facility. And then this is the consultant that assisted us in doing the study. And as I thank you, this is the link for the study that you can access. There's a lot of information there. You will be able to see what forms of innovations are available in each and every country within the region, cutting across from Mozambique up to Mauritius. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity once again. Thank you.
Majola, thank you very much for that presentation. Sorry we had to rush you. I know there's a lot of information there, and it's a very important case study, which reflects on the challenges, but also on the solutions there. So thank you again, Majola, for that. And any questions, please, onto Metamita, and we'll come to that towards the end. Thank you. Our next speaker is Professor Zhao Zhengyang. Professor Zhao is the Chief Scientist of the National Engineering Research Center for Information Technology and Agriculture, and he's also a member of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. Professor Zhao will be presenting on research and practices of digital agriculture with a focus of activities in China. Professor Zhao, thank you for joining us today, and I hand it over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Chunjiang Zhao from China. Today, my presentation is research and the practice of digital agriculture in China. China is now facing many challenges in agriculture, including lower resource use efficiency, small-scale farming, which results in lower production efficiency, the shortage of agricultural labor by urbanization. Another, the lower agriculture mechanization rate is also one problem. Especially, the farmers' too lower profit affects their willingness to produce seriously. This slide shows that the net profit of China's three major grain crops, rice, wheat, and corn, from 2016 to 2019 is negative. Now we enter the digital era. Digital agriculture provides the solution to reform agriculture production mode, to promote high-quality development. Next, I will take some of digital agriculture application scenarios to tell you how digital technology help farmers to get more benefits. Beidou global navigation satellite system support precision sowing. In north of China, the wheat corn continuous cropping system is very popular. In this way, after wheat harvest, corn sowing directly with no tillage. The application of Beidou GNSS can avoid corn sowing on wheat stubble by sharing the recorded position of wheat planting row. This slide shows the effects of corn precision sowing by application of Beidou GNSS. Beidou GNSS and control technology can let the tractor drive automatically and work at night. This slide shows Beidou GNSS application in cotton precision sowing in Xinjiang area. The second scenario is Internet of Things and remote sensing to help farmers in precision fertilization. We developed a portable crop canopy nitrogen sensing system. Through the system, crop canopy spectral data can be collected, calculated, and analyzed. At last, the system can give farmers their fertilization prescription. The portable sensing instrument is easy to use, but its work efficiency is lower. Remote sensing of satellite and UAV is suitable for large-scale farmland precision fertilization. Ongoing sensor can modify the fertilization prescription. This picture shows you the remote sensing for precision fertilization in Hebei province. The third scenario is precision pesticide spraying. Beidou GNSS help driver to avoid the repeated and missed spraying. The bus-based control technology to ensure each nozzle pressure is controlled and to prevent excessive spraying when the machinery is turning. Field demonstration is the most effective way for digital agriculture technology transfer and its popularization. Through field demonstration, we tell farmers the benefit of digital agriculture and how to use it. This is one field day activities of digital farming in Hebei province. This is the demonstration of digital rice production in Inner Mongolia. The tech showing including data communication, unmounted harvest, UAV spraying, precision spraying by ground machinery, green plant protection by ozone, subsoil tillage monitoring, the big data center run demo, and so on. Information service is very, very important especially for China's farmers who are generally in the lower education level. Now, China's rural area have achieved full coverage of 4-generation networks. The mobile phone becomes the new farm tools for farmers. We established the big data-based Agritech service platform, which connects agriculture technicians, experts, and farmers, and can answer the farmers' various production questions by technician or by system. Till now, the platform has connected all of China rural area. It has 10 million registered users, have answered 16 million farmers' questions, and provided 139 million times services. Future and prospects. Now in China, there are more than 200 million households engaged in small-scale farming. One household has on average 0.53 hectares of farmland. The challenges in future is to develop digital agriculture solution for small-scale farming, farmland consolidation, appropriate machinery development, trustship services, government assistance policies are all necessary for the promotion of digital agriculture. Now, my presentation comes to end. Thank you very much.
Professor Zhao, thank you for that excellent presentation and examples that you have provided about what is happening in China. From what we can see, you've proposed on the challenges there around low efficiencies and low labour and also low income, and hence the need for the digital technologies to come about. Those specific examples that you gave us were fantastic on GNSS and precision weeding, precision sowing, how IoT has been used for fertilisation, which is also a very important element to reduce cost as well as improve yield. And the lead on to that from terms of precision spraying. And it was also very interesting to see you got 5 million active users per day on that digital platform, which is very impressive. There's a lot of data there and a lot of information there that would be very useful in improving productivity in the future. So thank you, Professor Zhao, for that presentation. Again, for people who have any questions, if you could put that onto Metameter, and we can ask Professor Zhao at the end of this session. Our next speaker is from Neo Robotics, Gaten Severak, who's the co-founder. Gaten will be presenting work on agricultural automation for small-scale farmers with a specific focus on weeding, which we know is an important element in improving yield and productivity, as well as reducing costs. So Gaten, thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much to all of you for the invitation and the opportunity to share our experience. So my objective here is to explain you what we have done in the past for small-scale farmers thanks to automation, and I will focus on mechanical weed control in specialty crops, vegetable and vineyard, because this is where we have some experience, and this is where the farmers can find the best return on investment when they are investing in new technology like robots. And as well, preparing this presentation, I was asked to share a bit the journey of the entrepreneurship and how do we go from prototype to startup to industrialize a product. So I will just give you the big picture, and again, after, happy to have a discussion and to answer your question. So we started with my partner. I'm one of the two co-founders. We started Nio Technology 10 years ago, and this is what we were doing 10 years ago. So it was basically just mock-ups, prototypes of agricultural robots. We had the idea discussing with farmers And we were convinced that new technology, robots, automation can help farmers, small-scale farmers on some specific task. But at the beginning, again, it was just ideas, and we were just during the weekend in our garage doing some tests on small electrical machine. But step by step, the prototype evolved up to what you see on the bottom right, which was the first operational prototype of one autonomous robot. So it was still a very early stage, but working. And now, 10 years after, this is the kind of things we can propose to our customers. So this is Oz, our best seller. It's a robot, again, dedicated to small-scale vegetable farmers. And it's basically just a small autonomous and fully electrical machine, which can guide itself autonomously. And as you can see on the video, you can change the tools, you can change the implements, like on a small tractor, depending on the kind of task you want to do. So in this video, you see the first step, the robot was doing the seeding with a planting machine implements, and then you change it from some cultivation to weed, to kill the weeds mechanically, and depending on the scale, so the robot is fully autonomous, as you see on the video, and depending on the scale of the crops, here it's carrots, the kind of soil you have, you can adapt the tools setting, but all the time the robot is fully autonomous. And so thanks to that, you can save a lot of time, of course, which is an issue in small-scale farming. And you can unlock and improve more sustainable practices that are time-consuming. Because if you want to reduce chemical, then you need to augment, to increase the amount of work you perform. Another video, I will accelerate a bit, but I can share the link after. It's just to show that our customers, so this is one of our customers in France, but we are selling in all Europe and North America right now. Sorry, I will come back. So these customers have developed some custom tools behind the robots. So it's just here a small carrier, a trailer, but it helped a lot. And that's for me one of the best showcase. So there is a lot of different implementation on this robot. Sorry again, I'm messing up. I will share the video after, but just to say, long story short, all of our customers are customizing and adapting their tools. And this is what unlocks the true potential of autonomy. Autonomy is just about autonomous navigation and safety, but then after, you can yourself design some new tools, some new tasks, and that helps a lot the farmers. And then here is a bigger machine we have for vineyard. So again, same principle, the portal, the robot itself, it's fully autonomous, and you can change the implements, the tools, depending on what kind of soil you have, what kind of crops you want to work on, vineyard, depending on the kind of application you want to do. Here it's cultivating, but we can also have mowing, for example, to cut the grass. And again, fully autonomous robot. So I think you get it. What I want you to understand here is that even if we have different kind of robots, all of our, so we have three different kind of robots, fourth one coming. We have sold more than 300 units in operation, but they are all based on the same building blocks. And that's important because when you speak about agriculture, you speak about diversity, and you have to deal with a lot of diversity. So you need both some standard building blocks, like the autopilot, for example, the battery, but then you need also to be able to adapt the shape of the robot, the tools, to each situation. And that's a tricky part to deal with both the diversity, but keeping a part standardized, standard for obvious technical optimization reasons. Just one word about how do we sell those robots, how do we address the market. So what do we sell? We sell the robot itself, the hardware, and we sell some software services as well. as an option. You pay if you use it only. We have the software license, we have some training, we have connected services, and that's what we sell, our products. And then how do we sell it? So we sell it through a dealer network, like a standard tractor, for example. So we sell to the dealer and the dealer sell to the farmers. And we are also providing robots as a service. So we just charge the farmers per acre we did by our robot. This is a test we are providing in California right now, but it's showing quite promising results, and we will be very happy. We are trying to deploy this more globally. Just an idea about where we are again from actual point of view. That's the green area. The red area are where we plan to go in the next couple of years. But of course, we would like to have a global, a worldwide solution. And that's also where I'm interested as well for thanks to this contact with FAO, to see how we can develop optimized technology for all the country and all the different kind of situation you can face globally. So that's the question. This is the actual strategy, but I'm happy to discuss how to improve it and be able to address all the countries. Just another example about what you can do as from an accuracy point of view, thanks to the technology. So this is the same robot used on the left for the seeding, again, planting. It's just a bigger robot for high density crops. So you see here, the robot is doing the seeding, planting. And then that's a few weeks after, when the same robot is working on the same field to do the cultivating. And you see the accuracy of a few inches. And before to finish, just a slide to explain that when you speak about robot and connectivity, of course, you are also speaking about data. We saw this already in the presentation before, but it's always important to keep in mind that, yes, the robot is doing the same things than a human or a tractor can do, but then in addition, it can collect some data, create maps of the field, and monitor the crops just to know how many crops you have in the field, to try to detect some disease. So all this kind of information you can do in addition to the task, the first task you are performing, like cultivating. And then last slide to finish. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Last slide to finish. As I explained you, I was asked to share as well the entrepreneurial feedback. So if you want to start a company, it's important to keep in mind that it's about business. So you have not to focus only on the technical part, but also on the sales part. And it's important to sell. That's part of the job. You need to adapt, of course, because the world changes fast. So that's part of the journey. And you have both to fail fast and failure are part of the journey, but you have also to celebrate the victories. And please keep in mind, there is no recipes. Everybody can do it on his way with his method. So be yourself and enjoy your path because it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So yeah, I hope you will try and start some entrepreneurial project, but please enjoy it. Yeah. Thanks for listening to me, and thanks for the invitation again.
Gaëtan, thank you very much for that presentation. It's a nice different view. We've heard a lot today about from the farmer's perspective and what they're looking for. It's good to hear from a technology perspective because obviously the two need to meet together. We've learned a lot about the fact that you need to deal with robustness and that becomes an important element. If you can make it robust, then obviously that's something the farmer needs to worry less about, and then they can just focus on adding tools like you presented. And I think the end part where you showed how the robot then becomes a sensor platform that collects data that also supports what the farmers need on farm. Crop intelligence, for example, is also an important element of that. So thank you very much, Gaten. For the audience, if you have questions for Gaten, please put them on Metameter, and at the end of the session we'll be able to ask Gaten those questions. Thank you again, Gaten. Our next speaker is Dr. Sarah Hackford. Dr. Hackford is the Principal Investigator, Leader of Agriculture and Food Policy Group at the Faculty of Sciences at Humboldt University, Berlin. Dr. Hackford will be presenting on the opportunities and challenges in digital agriculture. So now we're going to see both what is great and also some of the challenges that we need to face and what that means around policy. So Dr. Hackford, thank you for your time and for joining us today, and it's over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. So, do you see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides and it's in present of you, so it's all good to go.
Okay, perfect. So, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very delighted to speak here today. I will present some findings from our research on opportunities and challenges in digital agriculture, and I will end with some policy recommendations. With no doubt, digitalization has made its way into food and agriculture across the globe. It is certainly a transformation, and some even speak of a revolution. You all know that digital precision technologies and data play a role in all steps along the food commodity chain nowadays, from the field to the fork. And as we can see from this table, companies offer digital tools for all kinds of operations, production of inputs, data-based payments, and of course for all kinds of farm operations, as we just heard, including field robotics, data-based agronomy services, digital farm management platforms, and digital marketplaces for commodity trade. If we now look at the opportunities of this transformation, there are usually mentioned increases in productivity and profits, reduced costs, and better access to information and markets for farmers. Likewise, this table from a recent study on adoption in Brazil shows that productivity was the most important perceived benefit, followed by higher sales, better planning, and cost reduction. However, one problem is that most studies, like this one, only present perceived benefits, and that most assessments are based on estimations. This means we do not have much data on the actual economic effects, and this is a challenge. Another major opportunity, which is often mentioned, are the environmental benefits. And here in particular, the industry, but also scholars, articulate very high expectations for sustainability gains. For instance, John Deere promises savings up to 90% in pesticide use with their artificial intelligence-based plant recognition technology. And for fertilizer, a recent study on Germany concludes average reductions of around 10% through the use of variable rate technology. In terms of these and other attempts to quantify the benefits, we see quite different results. They range between moderate to high, but they are quite depending on the indicators that are used and on the particular context. So generally, here the empirical data is quite scanty, and most numbers are estimations based on theoretical potentials. They are based on single case studies, and there's almost no data on systemic effects for agri-food systems. For instance, how different effects might accumulate or also be reduced through possible rebound effects. So to summarize, we have a data gap here that we need to close in order to better determine the actual opportunities for sustainability of precision agriculture. And in addition to that, I will now highlight some challenges that, in my view, should receive much more attention if we talk about a farmer-centric perspective, that places farmers' needs and constraints at the center, as well as the promotion of more diverse farming approaches. And this is one of the main goals of this event today. One of the main challenges right now is that digital technology is mainly developed for large-scale capital-intensive farming. And we have heard that a lot this day already. Corporate actors such as Bayer, BASF, John Deere, and others, sometimes in cooperation with big tech companies, dominate the field. And they are actually shaping the technology towards their own business models. So many platforms, field robots, smart land machines, etc., are developed for industrialized production of monocrops and not for small-scale and diversity-oriented farming. And as a result, we see a digital divide, and this is just one pattern of inequality we see in this field, a digitalization for some only, because high prices make many technologies unaffordable to farmers. Resulting from this structural control over technology, there are different technical, legal, and data lock-ins built into the technologies. And there are many examples where we see that farmers are challenged by a lack of interoperability in using different hardware and software systems. They are literally trapped in corporate technological ecosystems. And these lock-ins create dependencies from established pathways, and they limit the technological sovereignty of farmers if they cannot freely choose to switch systems, for instance, and feed in their data into new technological solutions. In fact, technology providers can even set up own rules on farm data uses, mostly through private license agreements nowadays. Because in most countries, there are no policy instruments in place that legally protect data sovereignty of farmers. The legal frameworks that exist, if there are any, are only fragmentary. Also in the European Union, this is the case. And this regulation gap is leaving farm data at the mercy of corporate monopolies, as we know them from other areas, and actually reproduces their power over food systems. In addition to that, there is the risk of a digital fix. And we currently observe the tendency in science and policy to rely on digital technology in order to solve systemic problems. And there's a high confidence in corporate digital solutions or in digital solutions in general, despite so far lacking evidence for significant sustainability gains, gains that we cannot also achieve with other approaches. And because of that observation, I think it is important to emphasize once more that digital technology is not the solution itself. It can contribute to sustainability, certainly, but as part of a structural change of underlying patterns of production. And my point here is that the focus on digital agriculture as a solution to sustainability might divert attention away in policy and funding from rather structural measures to address very well-known negative effects of industrialized food systems, social and ecological externalities. And it diverts attention away from other already existing and affordable low-tech approaches in agriculture sometimes, as for instance, agroecology-based farming. And this is illustrated, for instance, by the fact that precision farming has recently been included for funding under the eco schemes and the European Common Agricultural Policy, alongside agroecology. However, the difference is that agroecology has already proven to be a model to achieve higher productivity for small-scale farming, higher diversity, biodiversity in agriculture, and thus to contribute to food security and nutrition at the same time. So now where to go from here, from this critique? And I will end with some ideas for action and policy recommendation that I consider to be very relevant to shape digitalization towards more social and ecological sustainability. First, we need to advance agriculture data governance towards technological sovereignty of farmers to prevent corporate lock-ins and to shape this technology towards equal benefits. And second, we need to build more public digital infrastructure and invest more in non-proprietary solutions. This means technology that is really farmer-driven, and there are some very good examples. Technology that is open access and open source for equal access. And third, we need to direct more funding for digital technology development towards the need of small-scale agroecological and biodiverse farming to strengthen what some call digital agroecology, for instance. But most importantly, I think we need to acknowledge the limits of digitalization, because high tech is not always the most appropriate solution. And we need a broader notion of innovation, including white tech. And here is, this is a term I borrowed from Pat Mooney, I think. Technology that is farmer or more general, even people-driven and people-oriented, and not profit-driven in the first place. And I think we cannot stress this enough at an event like this one here today, that resilient and sustainable agri-food systems need more biological and also social diversity. And all digital technology should be conducive for such diversity, in my view. So thank you very much. I have some references here, and I will end.
Sarah, thank you very much for that very thoughtful and insightful presentation. You've given us just another picture of how technology should be used, maybe is probably one way of doing it. You've looked at the opportunities, both the economic and the environmental, but also pointed out that there's probably some more work that needs to be done to really define those opportunities properly. And then you talked about the challenges. It's specifically how the technology is really shaped around the business models of the industry, of the business partner themselves, and hence the business economics itself may trump smallholder farmer economics, and what that does as well. And thank you for the recommendations around the policy as well. They fundamentally looking at shifting the governance and the infrastructure back to the farmers or to be owned by the farmers. So thank you for that, Sarah. Again, if there's any questions for Sarah, please put them on Metameter, and we'll be able to ask Sarah at the end of the presentations. Our next and final speaker is Kamal Yaqub. Kamal is the Chief Executive Officer of Trotro Tractor, and he'll be presenting on the digitalization for hire service and data handling. So we'll talk a little bit about data with experiences from Africa. So Kamal, thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. You're right at the first slide now.
Right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamal Yaqub. Today, I'll be presenting digitalization for hire services and data handling, experiences from Africa, where Trotro Tractor is currently operational. That is Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So Trotro Tractor, basically, it's an agricultural technology that you can say the Uber for tractors, connecting smallholder farmers with the tractor services and other farm machinery services. The challenge has always been the gap between access to agricultural machinery services by smallholder farmers and those who want to rent machineries, farm machinery services to farmers. Majority are actually left out because they cannot afford the services for these machinery. The other part is those trying to make use of mechanization are also not having something to match it up. So a technology is the easiest way to bring this gap. And as they continue to have no access to machinery, our productivity is poor, under cultivation, poor harvest, and subsequently loss of income. So our model is very easy, like I mentioned earlier. It's the Uberization of machinery services, mechanization, the linkage between tractor owners and smallholder farmers. Our platform is a rent-based application that works on feature phones for all farmers. So we have a smart app which is the native app, which is available on Android and iOS, but farmers don't use that. What farmers mostly use in all the areas we work are the short codes, which is the USSD application. In Ghana, for example, where we started these services in 2016, that's about 6 years ago, farmers can just dial *714*85# and request for tractor services in any part of the country. And this does not utilize internet and does not also rely on smartphones. So the availability is there. And affordability comes in at the fact that it's a sharing economy. So one tractor mostly is serving about 150 farmers during farming season. So immediately the request is made through this USSD application. What happens is that our platform automatically matches the nearest farm machinery with the GPS location on our tractors to the registered tractors. And the operator that is closer to that farmer who is requesting quickly accepts if they are free. That is, if they are not busy, they can accept that, and within 72 hours, the farmer, smallholder farmer, receives their services. So that's how the platform operates. We have two scenarios. We deal with two main actors in this business. The tractor owners on one side, where tractor owners, individual who want to enter into hiring services for farmers can buy tractors, put it on a platform, or even farmers who have acreage that would demand less than how much the tractor is required. For example, if I have 100 acres of a farm and I have a tractor, I can only use the tractor 20% of the time. So the 80% ideal time is normally put on our platform to serve other farmers. Then on the other hand of our business is the smallholder farmers, where we rent these tractors and match them, where we match the tractors to the farmers. Now, when this happened, tractors, because of the data we pull from the tractors and combined harvesters, and now I'll come to that, drones and all other aspects, protocols of the farming machinery we are adding them one after the other. Because of the data we put on that, or we get from these smart machines, because of the GPS, we are able to maintain them and also connect them to the dealers to come and repair them anytime they are broken down. Farmers, because of the improved practices, are able to increase their yield. In areas where we have personally supervised, we've seen about 66% increase in yield just because of the improved protocols. Waiting time for farmers who are looking for tractors and combined harvesters has drastically reduced from 2 weeks to 72 hours. We've added another service feature because of the demand and also the actors in the value chain. So there are aggregators and large off-takers who want to give credit facilities to some of the farmers they work with. Now, if you give direct funds as loans, as credit to these smallholder farmers, other competing aspects of their lives, like children's healthcare, children's school fees, and other things come to compete with monies that are supposed to be used in the farm operations. So we've created an instant and simplified payment platform and added it onto our service. So if you require, for example, 100 tons of maize through our platform, you can give direct credit to farmers in the form of plowing, harrowing, seeds, fertilizer through our platform. It's also, this new feature makes it easy for extensive reports and monitoring and payment transaction of all smallholder farmers and approved value chain. Now, the most interesting part of this is it can easily be accessed by farmers in e-voucher form through their feature phones, where they keep their money as mobile money and transact in mobile money. Now, every transaction in Tractor, the aim is to go cashless and improve transparency and speed through this system that we have just introduced. The market is huge, starting from Ghana and the sub-region, West Africa, and then Africa as a whole. We've, on our platform, trained close to 2,455 certified tractor operators. And the deficit of tractors in Ghana is in the ranges of 13,000 tractors. This is a short video, an animation to show you how Tractor reaches smallholder farmers in rural communities. So just 1 minute or less than 1 minute, you enjoy this show. We call it the Amina. Yes, so the other thing that we've just added is also drone services on demand. So we realized that farmers applying controlling weeds and applying organic fertilizers in the form of liquid can easily be done by 7 or 15-liter drones. And so some people have bought drones on, and then they are giving services anytime this request comes. We have some currently in Ghana, and we are rolling it out also in Zimbabwe. So this is also how, just to give you a glimpse of how drone service on demand works on few acres.
We're going to have to end it at this one, Kamal, if that's okay.
Yes, so this brings me to the end of my presentation. I think the new addition is what we are looking to promote very well, because the drones come, as the earlier presenter mentioned, the drones come with several other aspects, like taking more data as they spray the land versus human intervention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kamal, for that interesting presentation and showing us an example of how those things are coming together. You talked about tractors for hire and how you've got a very simple system to use to allow farmers to do that, and you discussed how one tractor can service over 700 farmers, which is very impressive, and the virtual wallet, which also makes it easier. And it was interesting also to note that your business model focuses both on people who potentially own tractors as well as the smallholder farmers, so it kind of tackles those 2 points. So to the presenters, thank you for all your presentations and very thought-provoking knowledge and information and the examples. So we're going to move now to question time. There's been some questions on Metameter that have been put up that we've got together, but also if there's any questions from the audience, please raise your hand and we'd be happy to answer those questions as well. If I could start, unfortunately, Mayola had to leave for an emergency, so we had some questions for him. Some of them are generic that we can ask the rest of the panel, but also at the same time, maybe there might be some specific ones that we'll give to Mayola. Sarah, if we can start with you on, you kind of touched on the policy questions and what it means around governance and infrastructure. There were some questions on the chat around how digitization, mechanization could be integrated to support the farmers. So there was around that space, but you kind of touched on elements about how to work with the farmers, but we'd like to know a little bit more what you think about any recommendations on how investment might happen or might work in order to support that process.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I mean, my focus is actually, or my expertise lies more in Europe and North America, where I did my research, but I think many things can be or have a relevance for the global south. And I think that there are very good examples where technologies are developed in cooperation with farmers directly. And I mean, I mentioned on my slide some very, like, I would say progressive initiatives that try to develop open source, open access, and collectively controlled technologies like FarmLight, for instance. And this is not a result of a business model. It's non-profit. It's a cooperation of a university, of farmers' alliances. And I think we actually need more of that. And in the last panel, somebody said that the state should only create the framework conditions. And I disagree with that. I think we need a much more public initiative and also public funding for digital infrastructures. And I mean, not only with regards to other fields where we see how corporate actors actually control the field of digitalization, and this causes problems. And if we think of our food systems, I don't think it's the best solution to leave everything to the corporations. That's actually not what I see as a sustainable food system. And so the question of investment, of course, is valid, but I think we need much more public funding for these farmer-driven cooperative-based solutions like Light Farm, like Farm OS. I mean, these are solutions that might come from Canada or North America, but they are used in African countries, they are used in Latin America, and they are used by farmers. They are completely open. Farmers, if they have the digital knowledge, of course, they can adjust them, but they are very often working together with farmers and coders alliances, for instance, and they can access them, they can use them, and they're not trapped in legal contracts or other kind of lock-ins where they don't have actually the control anymore over their technology, over their data. And I think this is one very important approach. And this should be, I mean, this is something that is also in the European Union. It's on the agenda, but it's not really pushed forward.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot to do. Yeah,
Sarah, thank you. And I don't mean to kind of want to cause a little bit of a discussion here, but I'm going to move it to Gaten, because I know, Gaten, you've worked a lot across Europe with the robots and spread that out across the rest of the world, as you've shown in your presentation. So you've just heard from Sarah's perspective around the corporation/private element versus the public funding. But we also hear that even from FAO around the need for more private interaction from corporations. So do you have any comments, Gaten, on the ability to spread, for example, your technology to smallholder farmers?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we have this issue from a global perspective, like a richer country or less rich country, but there is the same situation inside each country, and we have some of our customers have just 1 hectare, and they lack the investment capacity in such new technology, and other customers have thousands of hectares. So it's a very important question we need to address if we want to provide this technology to all of the farmers. And again, I really believe that automation, mechanization is one solution to both have more sustainable practices and improve working conditions and solve labor shortage for the farmers. So to answer you, I would say, like, for all new technologies, and it was the same for me for the solar panel at the beginning. So you need some public support at the beginning to help to support the spread of the technology at the beginning, and then after it have to go pre-rate. Through pre-rate from a pure business perspective when you have the scale effect. So for me, again, we need both. It's helpful and useful to have public support at the beginning to promote, to deploy this technology, and in order to be able to reach the scale effect when you do not need public support anymore. That's for me what we need to achieve together. But then how to do that, I do not have the answer yet.
No, thank you, Gaten. And like I said, I think if we sat you and Sarah down, there'd be lots of good discussions for a long time, and both in your experiences. So, if we look at this relationship between public-private models and how that may support technology, we did hear from Sarah before, and it's probably a very good point that we shouldn't just focus on technology itself. It's part of the solution, and maybe a mechanism that helps that solution. If I can move to Professor Zhao, because I gather from the presentation that Professor Zhao presented, there is that relationship between both the public and private model, or government and private models to support this. Is that fair to say, Professor Zhao?
You're muted still.
Professor Zhao, just unmute. Yes.
Yeah. I think the public advice is very important for the farmers. Now in China, the government and a lot of cooperatives provide the public services, because in China there are a lot of small holes. The farmers cannot access to into the modern technology. So from the public services, so the small holder, the farmer can get the service. I think the farmer can get more benefit and have a very high input and output ratio. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Zhao. And also, just can you tell us a little bit about the examples that you showed us? How small a farm have these has the technology been applied to? How small has the farm been?
In China, one holder have only less than 1 hectare farmland. So in generally, the farmer give the money to get the service from the cooperative, service cooperative or organization or enterprise. So just like rent, yeah, rent service, yeah.
Thank you, Professor Zhao. One of the things that resonated also through all the presentations, and I'd like to come to Kamal on this one, but something that Sarah mentioned and then also Gaten showed was the role that the digital element within this whole process runs. Sarah mentioned around the ability for privacy and security and watching out for that. Gaten showed how you can detect down to the individual plant level and monitor the growth of the plant, and so there's something there around that relationship. But Kamal, you also focus a lot on, so I'm going to come back to that later, but Kamal, you focus a lot on the digital infrastructure. And so just a question from that perspective about, have you found any issues in the work that you've done around digital privacy? Have the farmers commented about it? Has there been anything around that that you'd needed to worry about? You need to unmute, come on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think data protection and privacy is one of the main issues that we have to pay attention to, and also juxtapose it to how we can see the good data and the bad data kind of activity. Because what Trotro Tractor has done is to join the data protection department of the country in Ghana to learn more about what are the vulnerabilities in using the smallholder farmers, because at the moment it's a one-way form. So for example, you have Uber and other social media agents who have digital, so there's a two-way data set that you can collect from, for example, when you ride on Uber with an app. But if you access tractor services with a USSD app, you're only giving your data, and whatever happens to the data with the recipient is very unlikely for you to even know. So what we have done on our side is to, for any time that we want to use the data to give access or to open more value additions to farmers, we do a consultation through an SMS blast and get farmers' attention, or farmers to approve whether they want the next service. So for example, if a farmer uses our platform to reach, to access plowing and planting services, with the data, if we ask the same farmer, do you want an insurance service on top of what you've done, like farm insurance service? If they say yes, then that means it's an approval for us to share with an farm insurance company to come share to use that data. So it's only when farmers have approved on what their data should be used is when we utilize it.
Thank you, Kamal. Gaten, any difference with large farmers? Do you, when it comes to data ownership and privacy?
You are asking to me?
Sorry, yes, to you, Gaten.
Yeah. So no, I don't see much difference from their point of view. Let's say it's only a scale effect, and when you speak about data, for me, it's always cool, or let's say more professionally, it's always stimulating from a technical point of view, an agronomic point of view, what you can do with it. But you always have to keep in mind that it's complex right now to have a profitability through this data, and the value of the data for the farmers, it's still not always obvious. And that's the next step where we will need to invest and to show yes, profitability, return on investment, or what is the value of the data. For me, it's more the key question.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And Professor Zhao, you mentioned you have like 5 million people using the system every day. That's a lot of data and a lot of information. I guess there are both. I mean, again, is there a privacy concern in the areas that you work in? And at the same time, I assume there's a lot of information that you could provide a lot of benefit to for the farmers. Can you comment a little bit on that?
No, we provide the information service and do not concern the profit, because the platform is supported financially by government, by the Ministry of Agriculture, China. So the platform, we provide the free information services. The registered users, including technicians who have the salaries, and they have the responsibility to provide the service for the farmer freely. Okay, so we generally cannot concern the profit of the platform of the service. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhao. Sarah, just back to you on this. I think, well, and having personally been involved in this process as well, there's obviously the data security, data privacy issue, but then there's also the benefit of having extensive data sets and being able to use that as a mechanism to both support the farmer as well. And I just wanted to get a feel from you about that conflict, I guess, between wanting to own data so that you can actually benefit the growers while at the same time maintaining that privacy element.
Yes, I think that's a very important question. And I think, first of all, we need to state that there are different types of data. There is public data, which should be accessible to use them for better farming practices. And this is one problem, because right now we have a variety of platforms and data formats and so on. So this is one thing. But then there's this private data, or it's actually business data that the farmers are actually having or generating and feeding into systems, and they are not getting the benefits. I mean, they are not getting remunerated for the data they feed into some platforms or software solutions. And I think that's the problem. So the sharing of the benefits of the data extraction, this is one thing. And right now we don't know very well what the technology providers are doing with the data. I mean, they probably use this to optimize their products, which is good because it's for the benefits of the clients that use the products. But this should be transparent. And right now it's a regulation gap. There's no legal regulation to protect the farmer's sovereignty over their data. It's basically a gray area where companies set up private license agreements and farmers can take it or leave it. And this is one problem. And this is where agriculture policy and data policy needs to converge and need to set clear and transparent rules in favor or in benefit for the farmers, and not primarily securing corporate benefits and control over data. That's one thing I would comment on that.
Thank you, Sarah. To Kamal and Gaten, just slightly different question here, but it's still related on the elements of data. But we talked about scaling, because obviously when you scale, you reduce the cost, and if you reduce the cost, then that benefits the farmer as well. Kamal, you mentioned that going from one small country across the whole, or one small country across the whole of Africa, that's a significant infrastructure growth process, digital infrastructure growth process you need to go through. Just very quickly, any comments about how you would explore that, given that you'd go over different states, different countries, and different types of languages and mechanisms like that? So how would you scale that infrastructure?
Yeah, with local support. I mean, as you say, you cannot do all this alone. So you always need, for each new country, you always need a local support, and it's mandatory to avoid to reinvent the wheels. So again, if we can work with local partners who are used to sell or to distribute tractors, for example, or if you can work with local partners that are used to provide technology or digital payments, then it's as much time as you save. But like you said, you need a minimum level of infrastructure, and sometimes you need to deploy this infrastructure with the technology. So that's part of the global plan, and the key is the local partner all the time.
Yeah. Does partnership involve things like the associations? Like, for example, in Europe, we know that you're part of SEMA. Does it involve that element as well? Does that help?
Yes, of course. Each association helps, because it's always about I like to have a view like you are always speaking of an ecosystem. There is nothing you can do alone, neither as a human or as a company. So you always need to rely on some ecosystem with interaction. And so existing organization, like in Europe, we have the CIMA, which is the syndicate of tractor, of agricultural machinery manufacturer, that can help a lot organization like FAO. So yeah, for me, organizations are part of the ecosystem, so they are very important stakeholders, but then you also need a local operational partner as well, in addition. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaten. And Kamal, the same thing for you? Is you know, do you have the same mechanisms, or is it different when you look in the African continent?
Yeah, I think it's basically the same. Yeah, infrastructure, local infrastructure, knowing who to connect with to expand and leverage is the main game, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, like Gaten mentioned. It's basically the same. It's basically the same. So the only thing I add is the ecosystem, which is helping us, especially in Togo and Benin, is, for example, the government and the development partners who are supporting and making sure that as we play in the same area, we make it easier for all of us to connect. Because, for example, GIZ works with farmers in Benin. We want to connect with farmers. So it was very easy to use that route to reach the farmers to deploy our services. So I agree with Gaten. It's very, very important to work with local partners, development, and then in a larger ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you, Kamal. Okay, so this is the last question for the whole panel, and it's regarding it's advanced technology. We've heard already about how the aging farmer, for example, and so part of promoting the technology would be the youth in some way, the next generation of farmers. So just quickly, maybe I'd start with Professor Zhao, Gaten and Kamal, and then end with Sarah, because there'll be elements around the ethical and policy elements that when you get the new generation in. So Professor Zhao, can you tell us a little bit about the younger generation who might be interested in this technology and how that may change in, you know, in terms of agriculture development?
Now, I think the farmer must get more training and to have more skillful to use the new generation technology, and another for the researcher must made our products easy to use for the farmer. In future, I think the smarter farming is the direction. So unmanned farming system maybe is the future of the digital agriculture.
Thank you, Professor Zhao. Gaten?
I like to remind that an anecdote, the beginning of NIO was thanks to a discussion with farmers that were complaining 10 years ago, saying all the young people are lazy now and no one wants to work anymore in the field. And I think he was kind of true, just because the expectation of the new generation about the life condition and the working condition are increasing, just because the global, the average way of life improve, and everybody want to have better condition. Each new generation want better condition than the previous one. So for me, the good point, it's a good point that humanity progress, is that new generation have a higher level of expectation of working condition. And so they will more welcome the new technology just because it will help. You know, technology is not it's not the answer. It's not a solution in itself. It's just a tools. And I think that the new generation is more capable to see the new technology as a potential improvement of their working condition. So for me, we just make the whole process easier for everyone.
Thank you, Gaten. Kamal, any comments on the youth and the role with technology in farming?
Yes, so I think for us in Africa, digital technology is the easiest way of engaging the youth in farming, in the sense that youth now have access to technologies that were not there before. So for example, the leapfrogging of phones, mobile phones, communication from no phones to phones in the pocket allows the young generation to do so much with technology, and then bringing them into agriculture and the food systems is the easiest way to engage more youth in the food system. So an example is a young person who graduates from agriculture engineering school, who ends up working in the city. It's just because there are no opportunities for them to engage directly in the food systems. But with digitalization, that young man is the best tool for growing more food, because they understand technology, they have the technologies, and they have also the skill set. And it's the easiest way of bringing down the age, the current age of the African farmer from 55 years old to the lower ages. I think digitalization is the way.
Thank you, Kamal. Yes, so technology is really good. It will bring the youth back into agriculture and so forth. Sarah, I'm sure there's value to technology, and how we bring the youth in is going to be important. Any comments?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I think the youth is much more open and affine towards these technologies because they grow up with them. And I think now it's the most important thing is that we shape how these technologies are used. And I just want to underscore something that somebody wrote in the chat, that the tools can be important to contribute, but the question is, what is the greater goal towards they should contribute? And I highlight the role of agroecology as an alternative, a sustainable alternative to the yet established model. And I don't think that everything that comes from the North or from Europe should be copied elsewhere. So leapfrogging should be one strategy. We need to shape technologies differently, that they have been established in many parts of the world and in many areas.
Thank you, Sarah. So hopefully to everyone at home and here, we've tried to give a balanced view of how the technology could shape the future of agriculture. Majola, Professor Zhao, Gaten, Kamal, Sarah, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the audience. We really appreciate it all, and that concludes the session for today, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.